Hello again, art friends, and welcome to another video. Today I'm working on an 8 by 8 inch collage. I'm working on hot press watercolor paper, and I'm going to try to stick with mostly black and white and gray and neutral colors. I did also pull a gold, and I have these really strong marks that I made with India ink and some other stencils that I used on my jelly plate. We'll get started with the biggest piece, as I usually do, and I really liked this piece, so I thought I would use this as my main piece, and I'm going to use it so that it covers up quite a bit of the collage, really as a nice grounding piece. I also have this piece that has a little bit of gold in it, which is a little bit of an odd color to use with gray. But it does have some black flecks in it that kind of got pulled off the jelly plate when I was making prints. So it has a little bit of that black tie-in. And then I have this other piece. I think it needs to have some of the yellow kind of pulled to the top just to balance it out. But that I didn't really like. I don't really like that piece at all. So I had this other piece that was a little more straight and a little thinner. And I kind of like that it was a little bit short, so I'm trying to see if I like that in there and that feels balanced. I also like the white gap between the gray piece and the yellow piece because of that really, that white little vertical line that's down there kind of lends it to having that gap. Now I have these numbers that were from a stencil, and I want to connect kind of the top part of the collage with the bottom part of the collage. So I wanted to have a piece that overlapped and sort of connected those. And I'm thinking I probably need a little bit more there of that pattern just to kind of pull it into the middle of the collage a little bit so your eye kind of travels up and into the collage. The one piece on the left probably would not be enough. So now I'm just kind of fiddling with where I think it would fit and trying to either line it up with some vertical lines or some of the color on that other piece so that they look like they are a little bit more connected. And then I'm just grabbing some other pieces that I have to see if, I want to go gray, but I realize I need to go probably with a strong color. And I liked this section of this mark making that I did with some India ink and a brush. So I'm just playing with that a little bit to see where that might fit. I have another sheet here too with some other marks. I did like something down in that bottom corner just to sort of balance it out. But I think that whole thing is probably too much. So I'm trying to see where I would cut that off. And now I've decided those are good to go as far as base pieces. So I have my Liquitex matte medium there. And I'm just going to glue down these pieces. Starting, of course, with the largest piece. Making sure it's covered. Now, the thing I found with working with these larger pieces is it's a little bit harder to get them lined up because it just wants to stick to the page. Luckily, the matte medium is a little bit pliable. And then adding the yellow one on the bottom, leaving a little bit of a gap. I don't know why, but this kind of reminded me of like an old barn door or something. I think it's probably the texture on there. And the sort of the vertical lines look like slats or something. And then I'm going to add the sort of muted numbers and the yellow strip at the top. I wanted to keep this really simple and not kind of over layer it because I really wanted the beauty of that gray piece at the bottom to show through because I just loved the texture. I don't remember how I created it on my jelly plate, but I just love the texture. It looks like old weathered wood or, something like an old tile. And here I decided that I didn't like that little white spot up there, it didn't feel balanced to me. So I added a little piece, but I left a gap there too to kind of mimic the gap below and that sort of white vertical line in the gray part. Just trying to make sure everything gets glued down really well. And I like that those numbers faded into that background once I got the matte medium on there. It tends to make the paper a little more transparent. And this is probably on deli paper or tissue paper. I can't remember. I do use the wet strength tissue paper as well on my jelly plate. And both of those are not completely transparent when you add them to a collage, but they're pretty good. And since they're the same color as the background, it's really hard to tell where they start and the background is. They kind of just overlapped and meshed together. And so now I'm back working with this bigger, really strong mark that I want to add in here. The background of gray and yellow is very close in value. So it's the whole thing is really kind of soft at this point. So I wanted a really, really strong mark. So I decided I needed to cut this all out. And then I ended up with this mangled piece that I fought with for quite a while to get situated right. Just because it was really, really hard to handle because I had to cut things, I had to cut slits in letters to get into the inside of the letters of the marks. They look like letters to me. The middle one looks kind of like a B. So then I ended up with this thing that was really hard to maneuver around because the pieces were loose. So now I'm just looking at it in a few other places before I really, really decide I'm going to glue it down. And it's like, nope, still like it on the bottom better. So let's get it glued down. And here again, you'll see I have a little bit of problem. I'm trying to get it lined up with the end where I cut it, but I also have to get it lined up with the bottom. Again, I need this to go right to the edges because it's exactly the size that's going to fit on the wood panel. So I can overlap and run off the edges because I can trim that off. But I need to make sure that I get it to the edges because I'm not trimming down this piece of paper. And so now I'm just looking at it, realizing that it needs to move back over to the left. It's hanging off too much. So now I'm trying to pull it up. It's all sticky and, without ripping it. And get it pushed over. And then I got to get it all glued back down. So there you saw it just skipped ahead because you didn't need to see me fight with this thing for 20 minutes. And I finally got it into a spot that I think it worked. And again, it overlaps the yellow and the gray. So for me, that visually kind of connects the top part with the bottom part. Your eye kind of goes across that sort of white gap and up into that gray area. And now I'm just making sure I get all the bubbles out best I can. You'll see there's little air pockets under there. And then I decided to take a piece of the other section and add a little bit more down there because that straight line coming down just felt really too harsh, and I wanted to kind of keep that more organic flow. And I had these little dots and other sort of gray patterns that I was playing with a little bit to see if I wanted to maybe obscure some of that mark a bit since it was so strong. And I have a lot of great ones here that I love, but I just couldn't find anything that I really, really loved. This one was kind of light. It wasn't quite as strong. And I thought that one might work. but it just didn't, I don't know, it didn't work. So I did end up going back and putting a little number overlay there instead. What I ended up doing then was just finishing off that mark so that it really ran off both sides of the bottom, which I think balanced it out a bit more. And then here's the finished version, and then a side view of it mounted on the wood block. I hope you enjoyed this video, and thanks for watching.